Hi folks, this is Karim Rao from IT Visualizer channel. We'll continue our lab, the Red Arrow lab. This is the video number 38. We have been discussing in the previous video the following. We have been continue working securing our Windows Server 2019 environment based on the recommendation of the Department of Defense and the Defense Information System Agency of the United States. I've been now working for 7 videos. This is the video number 8. We have discussed a lot of concepts and ways to secure your Windows Server 2019 environment. Some are concepts related to group policies you need to enforce to ensure your the secure of your environment, and some are recommendations to close or disable some services in the Windows Server 2019, and a lot of things actually. So let's continue where we have stopped last time. We have stopped at this recommendation, which is Windows Server 2019 Internet Protocol version 6. Source routing must be configured to highest protection level to prevent IP source routing. So we all know that IP version 6 it is an advanced way to give PCs unique numbers. We all know that an IP address, it is a number or a unique number given to a PC, so we can differentiate it from other PCs, and it is a way to communicate with other PCs. So if you have two PCs, they want to communicate with each other, you need to have, or every PC need to have an IP address, okay? Something like your telephone number, okay? You need to have a telephone number so I can call you, okay? So we have two versions of this IP addresses, or this way of identifying PCs. First, IP version 4, and actually now there is a new version of it. It's called IP version 6. What is the difference between IP version 4 and IP version 6? IP version 6 give you a great pool of IP addresses you can distribute. IP version 4, although it is a way to give PCs unique numbers, but it is almost finished. The numbers, or these unique numbers, are almost used, or all of them are used, or most of them are used. So IP version 6 give you an unlimited, or technically unlimited number of IP addresses you can distribute to PCs and devices, something like telephones and whatsoever. The new devices, you can, for example, give your refrigerator an IP address. This is called Internet of Things. So IP version 6 is more suitable for giving IP addresses to Internet of Things. Okay, so anyway, what does this recommendation say? Here it says that you need to protect your IP source routing. What we mean by IP source routing, for example, if I go to a website, for example, here I will open, for example, my Brave browser, and then I need to go or to reach Google website. What I need to do, just I open my browser and then type www.google.com and then press enter. Okay, so here my client, I am in Egypt, so here my PC sends a request to Google server in US so I can communicate with it. So a packet of data travels from Egypt to the United States. Okay, this packet travels in a route or in a way. Okay, this way consists of large number of routers. So for example, here I have my PC or my laptop in Egypt. To get to the internet, I need to communicate with my router, and then my router needs to communicate with the ISP or the internet provider's router, and then the internet provider's router need to communicate with the router of Egypt, or router of the government of Egypt, and then the router of government of Egypt need to communicate with the router, for example, of United States, and then the router of the United States need to communicate with the router of Google company. Okay, this is called the route. Okay, so here this recommendation says that this route is very, very special. No hacker, or you do not need the hacker to know your route. Okay, because if he does know a route, for example, to Google, he can know the router IP of your router IP, your ISP router. So let's, for example, see, to reach Google, how much routers we need to pass. So for example, he will type cmd, and then we will right click and tell him run as administrator. So let's see how much routers we need to pass until we reach Google. Okay, so we'll right click and tell him tell him run as administrator, and then press yes. Here we'll type trace rt www.google.com. So this command will tell us how much routers we will pass until we reach the Google website or the Google server. So we can now type here, this is the first router in Egypt, or this is my router, DSL router at home, and then this is the router of the provider, and then this is maybe our other router in Egypt. Okay, and this is the fourth router. So we can go all of the way until we reach the server of Google. Okay, so to reach 216.58.211.196, this is the website of Google, or this is the router, or this is the server of Google. So we need to know how much routers we will pass until we reach Google website or Google web server. So all of these are routers. Okay, so some of them may be in Egypt, some of them may be in the United States. So here we can see that we are now reaching a router maybe in the United States, seaborn.net. Okay, I think now we have got out of Egypt, so now we can go and continue. These are all routers I need to pass until I reach the Google server. Okay, we can go with this until it ends. Let's see what is the router that we will pass, or how much routers we will pass until we reach the Google server. So this is a very good command to trace or to troubleshoot problems with your internet connection. So for example, maybe you have a problem with the internet provider outside of Egypt, or with a router outside of Egypt, that you can't through it reach a certain website. Okay, so here you can see that we have a lot of IP addresses. All of these are routers. We will continue until we reach this IP address. Okay, so here we can see that we have reached already Google. So how much routers we have passed, or how much my packet of data traveled until it reached Google website? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 routers across the globe. Okay, from Egypt until we reach the United States. So this is very important data. Okay, the hacker can hack, or can go and sniff, or let's say not sniff, spoof your data, or he can examine your data. Okay, for example, I am trying to reach Google. He can interfere in the middle and see this data. So, and through this data he can know the IP address of your router, the IP address of your provider. So through it he can hack. We need this information not to be displayed. So there is a way, or when you send a request to the Google website, these data are contained in the data packet. Okay, this is how I understand it. So we need to protect. We don't need this kind of info to be exposed. Okay, when I request a data from Google, I need only the hacker to know that I am communicating with Google, but he doesn't need to know this info. So the Department of Defense have made a group policy. It protects this kind of data for the hacker to view. So let's see how this can be done. So here he is saying that configure the system to disable IP source routing. This is the source routing, the one that I was discussing now. This is source routing, the source of the IP address from when it begins until it reaches the destination. This is called source routing. So all of these are called source routing. Okay, so this is not, or should not be known by the hacker, or there is no way he can know this data. We need to protect this data. So now I have done trace RT and I know all of this data. What guarantee that the hacker does not know this info? So we need to protect this kind of data. Let's go and configure this for IP version 6 and IP version 4. So we need to disable IP source routing. This is a way to protect our data against spoofing. There is a kind of tools that can capture the data or data packets sent to Google from your laptop and see all of this data. So let's see first if it is already activated in my domain or on my network through the registry of my PAW workstation. Let's see if it is already enabled, and if it's not enabled or we don't have this kind of option, we need to enable it through activating a group policy. So let's continue here. We need to go to services, I think. Okay, and then here we are just browsing the path to a certain location or a certain path in the registry to know if we have IP source routing disabled or enabled, special IP version 6. Okay, so this is TCP IP6. Okay, and then parameters. Here is the parameters. We need to see if we have disable IP source routing registry key there. It's not there, so it's not disabled by default. So we need to go and disable it through a group policy. So we need to go to the administrative or group policy templates of the Department of Defense we have installed earlier and tell him to disable IP source routing. And we need to enable it with highest protection. Okay, so here we will go to disable IP source routing version 6. And then we need to enable. Okay, we need to enable, and then after enabling it will say highest protection routing, source routing is completely disabled. Okay, so the info that we have displayed earlier, I think it will not be available. Okay, so we need to carefully try this group policy. Okay, I don't know if it will affect the network or the communication between your devices. You need to test this very carefully in a virtual environment before applying it to your production environment. Okay, because we don't know if this will do any damage. Okay, anyway, but if the Department of Defense done it, so I think it's safe. But anyway, you need to try it because maybe their environment is more secure or they have more restrictive measures. So this maybe is taken into consideration, or it is given more let's say more focus, more than the performance. So they can maybe maybe concentrate on the security more on the performance of the network. So maybe this is their first priority. Anyway, so we need to disable IP source routing for IP version 6 and IP version 4. The next recommendation will do so. Okay, so we will do IP source routing disable for IP version 4 and IP version 6. And trace RT is a command that you can use to troubleshoot problems if you are not communicating to a website. This will tell you, or this will help you to troubleshoot where is the problem. Maybe your provider router is down, maybe a provider in Google is down. Okay, so if there is a problem, for example, to reach Google website and you make trace RT, maybe there is a problem in one of the routers of Google in the United States. Anyway, so now we need to enable the group policy to disable IP source routing version 4. Okay, and highest protection source routing is completely disabled. Okay, so this is 2 recommendations. Let's go to the other one. Must be configured, another recommendation must be configured to prevent internet control message protocol redirects from overriding open shortest path generated routes. Allowing SMP redirect of routes can lead to traffic not being routed properly. When disabled, this forces ICMP to route it via the shortest path first. So here I think ICMP, it's basically used to troubleshoot or internet problems, maybe ICMP. Anyway, he's saying here that we have said that there is a route. So if I want to reach Google, there is a route that I should take. Okay, so I need to go from router, from my DSL router at home, then my provider DSL router, and then some routers I reach Google website. is there only one route? No, there is a lot of routes actually. There is a lot of routes, and they are not some of them are long routes until you reach Google, and some of them are short. Here is saying that you should use the shortest path so you can communicate with the website more faster. So he's saying that ISMP redirect of routes can lead to traffic not routed properly. When disabled, this forces ISMP to be routed via the shortest path first. We have discussed this before in Windows 10. Okay, this is related, or it is more concentrating on personnel that has taken CCNA. Anyway, so we will disable also this, or we will enable this policy to make sure that our routes are the shortest one. Okay, so let's wait for a moment. And also please test this recommendation, because I think it will affect the performance of the network. Anyway, so here we will tell him to enable ISMP redirect. I have discussed this recommendation when we were securing Windows 10. Okay, please refer to my video for securing Windows 10. This section or this recommendation is specific. Okay, so we'll disable it. Okay, and then we will continue working. Okay, and here we say that this recommendation says that NetBIOS name release requests, you must ignore NetBIOS name release request except from Windows server. What is a NetBIOS? Every PC in your domain have a name and have an IP address. Okay, we all know the IP address. It is a unique number, so I can identify the PC. And as we are all human, we cannot remember numbers very easy. So to make it more easy to remember PCs, we give them a name. Okay, so we give them a name and a number. Okay, when I try, for example, to communicate with a PC called Ahmed, okay, I don't need to remember his number. I just go or tell the DNS, this is a service, please, I want to communicate with the PC named Ahmed. Then he will see a list or see his database. Okay, the name of the PC Ahmed, or the PC named Ahmed, has an IP address of so and so. Give it to me, the PC of Karim, and then I can communicate with the PC of Ahmed. Something like the telephone operator, for example. If you want to search for one's telephone number, so you call the telephone operator, give her the name of the one that you are trying to search. For example, I need to communicate with Ahmed Raouf, so I am telling the telephone operator, please give me the telephone number of Ahmed Raouf. See, so it searches its database and give me the number, then I can communicate with Ahmed through his number. Okay, so this is the role of the DNS. The DNS, you give him the full name of the PC. The full name of the PC, it is the name of the PC plus the domain. So for example, if I am in a domain called redalert.internal and my PC is Karim, so my full domain name is karim.redalert.internal. Okay, so I give it to the DNS, he gives me my IP address. Okay, so here this is called full domain name. Okay, what about the NetBIOS name? NetBIOS names, it is only the name of the PC. So my name of PC is Karim, this is called NetBIOS name. My full domain name, it's karim.redalert.internal, this is called full domain name. Okay, so the DNS, you give it the full domain name and it retrieves or gives you the IP address of the PC. As for the Windows server, you give him only the name of the PC without the domain, which is Karim, and he returns the IP address. Okay, so he is saying that you should not, as a server, okay, accept resolving of this kind of for example, he's saying ignore NetBIOS name releases requests except from Win server. So for example, if I am a PC, okay, and I am asking another PC to give him or to get my IP address, or he is trying to get my IP address through providing the name, this will be ignored. Okay, the only request that it is accepted, it is from the Wins server. The Wins server, he is the one responsible for resolving the NetBIOS name of the PCs to the IP. Any other request from any other server other than the Wins will be ignored. He's saying that configure the system to ignore name release requests except from Wins server. A Wins server, it is a server that is responsible to translate the NetBIOS name of the PC to an IP address. Okay, this is the one. He's saying that configuring the system to ignore name release request or resolving except from Wins services prevent a denial of service DOS attack. The DOS consists of sending a NetBIOS name release request to the server for each entry in the server cache, causing a response delay in the normal operation of the server Wins resolution capability. Anyway, so it's saying that you should not accept any name resolution. So if I'm, for example, asking to get the IP address of Karim, the PC of Karim, this should be ignored if it's not from the Wins server or from the DNS server. Okay, this is what he's saying. Okay, so let's also see how we can do this. This is also done using a group policy, but take care also, I think maybe some programs need the NetBIOS name of the PC, but anyway, we need also to try this recommendation in a virtual environment and see if it will do any damage or not. So let's go first and see if it is already enabled in the registry or not. So let's see if we have something like this. Okay, so let's see if it is already enabled NetBIOS. Okay, and then or in NetBT. Okay, and parameters, let's see if we have it already, or this group policy enabled to ignore NetBIOS name resolution not issued or requested from, or not issued from Wins servers. Okay, from servers other than Wins servers. Okay, so it is not enabled, so we need to allow computer to ignore NetBIOS name release request except from Wins servers. Okay, so let's go here and enable this option. Okay, and then enable not this one. And I think we have a lot of useful group policies here by the Department of Defense, but anyway, we can see them later. But we need to enable the group policy for let's see here, I don't remember. Allow computer to ignore NetBIOS name release request except from Wins servers. So any server other than the Wins server asking to resolve the name of the PC, it will be ignored. Insecure logins to SMB server must be disabled. We know SMB server, it is typically a file server, or any server that you have files and folders on it and you need to share it to your users in your network. So this is called SMB server. It has maybe a name in Windows called file server, maybe on Linux it's called SMB. Anyway, a SMB server, it is a server that you install so you can share folders and files to your PCs in your network and users in your network. He's saying that insecure logins to SMB server must be disabled. So for example, if I have a couple of files and folders, I need to share it to my users in the domain. So I get the file server and put the files and folders and share them, okay, and give the path to the users. Okay, so when the users try to access these folders, they need to have a valid username and password. They should be in the domain and they should have a valid username and password, or should be a member of a domain. Okay, so if he is not a member of the domain, he will not be able to access these files and shared folders. Okay, there is an option that you can allow users that are not a part of your domain to access these files and folders, something called insecure guest logins. It will allow you to access shared resources and folders or shared files and folders without having a valid username and password in the domain. Okay, this is called insecure logins. So we need to disable this kind of option on our SMB server, on our or on our file server. Any user that need to access a certain file or folder that is shared on the file server, he should have a username and a password within the domain. Okay, this sometimes insecure logins, this is done on if you have for example storage or network storage. Sometimes the network storage use this method to allow users to access files and folders shared on them. Okay, so if you have, for example, a network storage or NAS, and you have make it as a point, or make it as a place where you can share your files and folders to your users in your network, it uses this kind of method of allowing users to access the files and folders. It will not ask for their username and passwords. They will allow them to access automatically without needing to require a valid username and password. So this is on the network storage devices. Okay, so you need to take care. If you have a network storage device, you need to disable this kind of option on it. If someone needs to access files and folders or a NAS storage or network access storage, he should have a valid username and password to access the files and folders shared on a NAS storage. Okay, so we need to see if we have this kind of option. Okay, so we go to enable insecure guest logins. Insecure guest logins, here you are not required to provide, or you don't need to be a user in a domain that have a valid username and password, so you can access the files and shared folders on your file server. Let's first see if this kind of option is enabled. Okay, or we need to disable, actually, to disable insecure logins. So we need to make sure that anyone that need to access files and folders shared on a file server, he need to have a valid username and password within the domain. Okay, so let's continue and see if we have something like this. Okay, enable insecure logins. We need, first of all, need to see if it is, this option is enabled already in the domain. So we can check this from the registry. So if you need to know if any option is enabled or disabled in your network, you can check it through the registry of any machine in the domain. Okay, so enable secure logins. Let's see if it is already enabled on my POW workstation. So let's see this. It's not any, it is already enabled, so I need to disable it. Okay, we need to disable it, because if I don't find this key, allow insecure logins, this means that it is already there, it's already enabled. So we need to go and disable this option. So allow insecure login, it's already enabled, so we need to go and disable this option. LAN server, I think it's LAN server, not LAN or LAN workstation. Enable secure guest, insecure guest login, need to disable it. Okay, okay, so this is it, and let's continue with other recommendations. Here saying Windows Server handling universal naming convention must be defined to require mutual authentication and integrity for at least sysvol and net login shares. So we need, if you have any folders or files shared on your file server, you need to secure the path to access these files and shared folders. For example, if you have shared a folder on a server, for example Karim, so you go to the user and give him the name of the shared folder and the server on it. So for example, I have a server called Red Alert, so the path to the folder will be Red Alert / Karim. This is the path to get to the folder. So he's saying here that there is a way to secure this path to access the shares on our file server. Okay, he's saying at least if you are not going to secure all of your paths to access your shared folders on your file server, you need at least to secure the folder shared folder shared on the name sysvol and netlogin. These are two important folders in the Active Directory. They are shared by default when you install or you when create a domain and install Active Directory. These two folders contains important or very important data to the Active Directory. One of them contains the group policy that will be applied to the PCs and workstations, and the other contains the scripts that will be applied to the PCs and servers. So these two paths or this shared folder should be secure, or the path to access this shared folder should be secure. We'll do something called hardening universal naming convention. Okay, so here we're saying that additional security requirements are applied to UNC paths specified in hardening UNC paths before allowing access to them. This aids in preventing tampering with or spoofing of the connections to these paths. So here is securing the access to these paths, which are paths to shared folders. Okay, so if you not do this for all of your paths pointing to your shared folders on your file server, you need at least to do this for the sysvol folder and the netlogin shared folders on your domain controller. So we will do this to secure or to require mutual authentication and integrity. Okay, so here is he is ensuring that the one who is accessing these folders should be within the domain, or to be an authorized user to do this through mutual authentication and integrity. Anyway, so we need to know if this kind of option is enabled in our network. We need to go to the registry and see. If it's not enabled, we need to enable it through the group policy. So let's go and see. This is requirements applicable to domain joined systems. Okay, I think actually also this recommendation should be also tested thoroughly. Most of these recommendations will affect the recommendations we are discussing in this video will affect the performance, I think. So you should test it very carefully. Anyway, so we need to go and see if this kind of option is enabled in our network. Hardening paths. Let's see here, no records found, so we don't have this kind of option enabled. So we need to go and enable it through the group policy. So network provider harden UNC paths, and then we should list the two shared folders or the two shared folder paths and tell him to harden it. Okay, or to require mutual authentication. This is an option to secure the access to the shared folder paths. Okay, so let's go now and type what he's saying here. Netlogin, this is the path to the shared folder, and then this is the option to require mutual authentication and require integrity. This is the value that we will provide so we can secure the access to these shared folder paths. Okay, so here we need to access it, netlogin, and then put these two values. So netlogin, and then let's go and put, I actually have discussed this recommendation before when we were securing Windows 10. So if you can return to my video concerning Windows 10 for more info, especially this recommendation. Anyway, so we'll put this netlogin. Okay, and we will do this also for the shared folder called sysvol. Okay, so sysvol also, it's a very important folder for the Active Directory. This contains the group policies that will be applied to your whole domain. Okay, so we need to also put or to harden or to secure the access to this shared folder. Okay, to require mutual authentication and require integrity. Okay, so let's put the two recommendations. Okay, I think I will do it again, maybe because I have missed something. So anyway, we will do this. Let's go further here. So here we'll go sysvol. Okay, and again again hardening. So and then we put the data and then OK, and then apply and OK. So now this is how to secure access to your shared folder paths. Here we can say that another recommendation to command line data must be included in process creation events. He is saying that enabling include command line data for process creation event will record the command line information with the process creation events in the log. This can provide additional detail when malware has run on a system. So for example, if I need to open the Adobe Reader application, so I am a user on the Windows called Karim, I go to Adobe Acrobat Reader.exe and then I double click on it and then the application opens. Okay, and then for example I close it. So this is a process. Okay, this is called a process or a process creation. This is an application process. Okay, so you need to include this, will be recorded by the way in the event log. This process should include if there is any command lines or any commands are issued or are run when this process is created. Say include command line data. Okay, so this provide additional information. So for example, if some commands are run in the background when I open the Adobe Reader application, this will be included in the event viewer. Okay, saying that this is a very important thing, because if there is a malware that is running in the background, this will appear in the command line info concerning the process of the running of the malware. Okay, so we need to include command line data for process creation events. Okay, so this is also one of the good things to include. Okay, we need to, this is I think will be done through the audit process creation. So this is not already enabled. We can check the registry to ensure that we don't have this option enabled. So let's go and see. Okay, let's continue. Microsoft, and check if you have this option enabled or not. So we need to audit or need to include every process happens in our system to be recorded with their command option. If there is a command issued when a process is created in my operating system, this should be included and recorded in the event log, of course. Okay, and then we need to go to policies. Okay, and I think we will go to system and then audit. Okay, system and then audit, process creation, audit, and then process creation. We don't have any records, so we don't have this option enabled. We need to go and enable it through the administrative templates, system, and then audit process creation. Okay, we go to I think go to system and then audit process creation and then include command line process. Okay, enabled, and then apply and okay. And this is the explanation for the group policy itself. Okay, here is saying that another recommendation is to configure to enable remote host allows delegation of non-exportable credentials. What is saying here is saying that when you, for example, try to connect to a remote host, okay, and you need to provide credentials to access this remote host, okay, the credentials will be saved to the machine that you are trying to connect to. So for example, I have a remote machine called Ahmed. I need to connect to it, so I go to my PC, which is called Karim, open the remote connection desktop manager and connect to Ahmed PC, and then put the password that is allowed, or the username and password that is allowed to access the PC of Ahmed. This password will be saved to the PC of Ahmed, so we don't need this kind, or we don't need this process to be done. He's saying an exportable version of credentials is provided to remote host when using credential delegation, which exposes them to theft on the remote host. Restricted admin mode or remote credential guard allow delegation of non-exportable credentials, providing additional protection of the credentials. Enabling this configures the host to support restricted admin mode or remote credential guard. So by enabling this group policy, the password I use on the remote desktop connection manager to connect to a remote PC will not be saved on the PC itself. Okay, the remote PC that I'm trying to connect to. So this is what he's saying. Do not allow the passwords to be saved to the remote machines you are trying to connect to. Okay, so this is done by a group policy, and this is also done by opening another option called restricted admin mode or remote credential guard. Okay, this will secure your password that you are using to connect to remote PCs. It will not save it to the remote PC. So this is what he is saying here. You need to enable the host to support restricted admin mode or remote credential guard. So you need to enable the restricted admin mode or remote credential guard on the remote machine. Okay, so by enabling this option on the remote machine, the password that you are using to connect to this remote machine will not be saved to the remote machine itself. Okay, so this is also one of the things we need to concentrate on. So this is also an option. Let's see. First of all, I need to know how much time left, or how much time we are working now. For about 41 minutes. Okay, so let's continue. So you need to enable the passwords not to be used or to be saved to the remote machines. Allow protected credentials. Let's see if we have this option enabled or not. Okay, so let's go and tell him credential delegation. I know it's not already in the I have not already enabled this option, so let's go and tell him to what is the option? Allow remote or remote host allow delegation of non-exportable credentials. Allow remote host delegation non-exportable credentials. So this will not save my password that I use to connect to the remote machine on the remote machine. Okay, so this is the thing. We need to tell him to enable this option. Okay, applying. Okay, and let's continue. And actually, I have enabled restricted admin mode before in another video in this series. We have enabled restricted admin mode on all of our remote connections. Okay, so this is already done. We have already done this option before. Restricted admin mode or remote credential guard. Okay, so let's continue. I think what we are stopping here, so let's continue. Okay, so here I think we have stopped, so let's go to the other or the next recommendation. Here I think I'm checking to see if I have this option allow protected credentials enabled, but I think I don't have it, so I didn't have this option enabled to allow protected credentials. If it is there, then that means we have our or we are securing our remote username and password used to connect to a remote machine. Here the other recommendation is to virtualization-based security must be enabled with the platform security level configured to secure boot or secure boot with DMA protection. So virtualization-based security, it is a platform that, or it is something when you buy the hardware of the machine, it is already there. This is an option in the hardware of the machine that will add more security features, something like credential guard and virtual-based protection of code integrity. Anyway, so this is an option on the hardware that will secure your PC more. How we do this? By securing the boot process to the Windows operating system. So this is the thing. We need to make sure that we have a virtual-based security option enabled on our BIOS or our especially our BIOS, okay, the BIOS of the hardware, because this feature will when we enable it will secure the boot to the operating system. Okay, so we need to enable this option, and then after enabling it we need to configure secure boot of the secure boot to the operating system, or secure boot with DMA or direct memory access protection. So this is in very simple ways. It is an option on the hardware. We can enable it from the BIOS of the machine or the firmware of the machine. This option will help us to protect the secure, or this to help us to secure the boot to the operating system. Okay, so we need to enable this option, and then after we enable it, we need to choose the option to secure boot or secure boot with DMA protection. Okay, so this is the thing we need to know. First of all, we need to know if this option is already on our hardware. So if I have a PC and I need to know if I have the virtual-based security enabled on my hardware, or my hardware supports this feature, or I can open this feature on my hardware, we need to do this. We need to go and run a certain command to know if we have the virtualization-based security enabled on our firmware, or it is already supported by our hardware, or it is already the hardware you can enable it on our hardware. So let's see if we have something like this. We need to go and see. So we need to secure, or we need to open an option to secure the boot to the operating system. Okay, we need to go and see first if we have the virtualization-based security enabled on my hardware, or if my hardware support this kind of option. So we run a certain command, and by this command we will know. Okay, so I will run this command and get some results. Okay, we need to see the result. Okay, and after that we will know if I have already virtualization-based security enabled on my domain controller. For example, let's issue the command on my domain controller through the PowerShell. Okay, so right click and paste. Okay, and then press enter. Here, let's see, he's saying here that, for example, we can see here virtualization-based security. This is the option. It is 0, so that means I don't have it enabled on my domain controller. So I need to go to the firmware or the BIOS of the machine and enable this option. What if I didn't find this option? So then my hardware doesn't support this feature. Okay, so you need to make sure when you buy your hardware to have this feature enabled on it or supported. Okay, so let's see also if, for example, we see required security properties, this option to indicate secure boot. Okay, so this means that, so we need first to know if we have this option. If it is enabled, I think it will be 1. So if it is enabled, then we need to, after enabling, to activate the option to support secure boot or secure boot with DMA. Okay, here we can see that this option is not enabled. So after that, the required secure properties is not enabled. The security service guard is not enabled. So this is the primary one. If it is enabled, we can then enable the other options. So we don't have it, so I don't have virtualization-based security enabled. If it's not to indicate running, this is a finding, so I don't have virtualization-based security enabled. Okay, so this is a thing, I don't have it. So if it is not there, I will not able to activate the secure boot option or secure boot with DMA protection. So this is the one. This is through the command prompt. We can get this from the graphical interface. Let's see how we can do this. We will run the system info or MS info 32 to get this same data, but in a graphical interface. We can interpret, or we can see it in a more clear way. So now I'm accessing my domain controller. Okay, so why we need to secure the boot to the operating system? Because a hacker can interfere with the process of booting to the operating system, and he can manipulate it. He can prevent it, or he can tweak it, or do many changes to it. Okay, so we will copy this command and then we'll go and run this command on the domain controller and see if we have the virtualization-based security option enabled in our BIOS. Okay, let's see, or our firmware. So here right click and paste. Here I can't paste directly, so I need to go to edit and paste. Okay, and then press enter. Let's see here from the summary. Okay, if we need to see device guard virtualization based security. So let's go down, device guard, let's continue. Virtualization based security is not enabled, so we can enable it from the BIOS if we can see, and the kernel DMA protection, okay, it is off. Okay, so we need first to enable device. So we have a lot of things, all of them are not enabled. Virtualization based security is not enabled, so we need to enable it, and then after that we will enable the secure boot or device secure boot. Anyway, if it's not enabled, we need to have a group policy to enable it, that on one condition, if it is already supported by your hardware. So we need to go to the device guard and tell him turn on based virtualization security, and then we need to tell him secure boot or secure boot with DMA. So if your virtualization based security is not enabled, you can enable it by a group policy, but on one condition, that your hardware supports virtualization based security. Anyway, so we need to enable this option through a group policy. I think there is a link that describes what is the credidental guard or guard. Anyway, so we will stop at this recommendation. Okay, and we will continue working with it, or we'll continue working the next time with the rest of the recommendations to secure our Windows Server 2019 based on the recommendations of the Department of Defense and the Defense Information System Agency of the United States. Hope this video was informative for you all, and to thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much.